Welcome to the sportswagers.ca podcast with Brian Sherwood Steinberg and Matthew Finney.
Welcome to the sportswagers.ca podcast. I am the man behind the board, Matthew Finney. Of course, joined this week and every week by Brian Sherwood Steinberg. All those great free daily write-ups over on sportswagers.ca. Good day, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Matt. You know, I've been doing this a really long time. Probably since I was 16 years old, I was betting sports, and I got buried when I first started. You know, I mean, I was a young kid, and I got in over my head a few times, and I fell into a lot of bad habits, if you will. And I have to say, you know, you never stop learning. You just never stop learning, no matter what you're doing or how good you might think you are at certain things. You never stop learning. And this past weekend in the NFL, Matt, we fell into the bad propensity of breaking down the games instead of, you know, using the smart criteria and playing to over and under reactions. And I have to apologize for that, because the entire world was on Kansas City on Saturday and the Rams on Saturday. And I had a big bias towards the Rams because I was playing them all year. We had them to win the Super Bowl. We had tickets on them at 33-1 and 25-1, and we bet them to win the NFC West. And we got caught up playing them in the even though I liked them, right? I did like them to win on Saturday and cover, but you know, I always say, who cares what I like, right? You have to play under and over reactions. You know, you have to do it. And you take a veteran team like Atlanta, who's been there before, that made a deep run last year, that has the experience, and you had the masses betting LA. There was a lot of things in Atlanta's favor on Saturday, and it's easy to play results, but, you know, you can't worry about the X's and O's, and the same with Kansas City and Tennessee. So, you know, it's so hard not to watch a game and allow it to poison your mind. Like anybody that's watched Philadelphia and Atlanta over the last few weeks, especially, you know, Atlanta is fresh in everybody's mind. Atlanta, what they did to the Rams on Saturday, you know, I mean, it had a resounding impact, right? They were really good. They were good defensively. They moved the ball when they had to. Matt Ryan looked poised and confident, and the Rams looked out of sorts. So you take Atlanta. You know, you got that playoff experience. They had a great opening game in the playoffs. And then you take Philadelphia, who looked absolutely brutal the final 2 weeks of the season against Oakland and against Dallas. And you got Nick Foles, who looks brutal. I mean, how can anybody that watched the last 3 weeks bet Philadelphia this weekend at, you know, getting 2.5 points against Atlanta, right? Well, by breaking it down through the X's and O's, you really can you? You know, you really can. It's so hard. Your mind is so poisoned by what you saw, and it's hard to get that out of your mind, right? It's really hard. But the prudent play this weekend in the Philadelphia-Atlanta, what is that, the semifinal round? The prudent play is Philadelphia getting points at home, as hard as that may be. Now, forget the result. I don't care what the result is, right? We're playing over and under reactions. We're going against what is in the minds of the public, and we'll probably be on, unless something changes from now till Saturday, we're more than likely going to be on Philadelphia. As hard as that's going to be, that would be the right play this weekend. And you just got to be very, very mindful to get that other stuff out of your mind. You know, what you see, the X's and O's, what one team did from week to week, right? No team is as good as they look, and no team is as bad as they look. So it's probably the better play, Philadelphia, and then we'll go down the list. I mean, we're not gonna go through all the games right now, but I thought it was important to point that out. How watching games and letting it poison your mind or influence you greatly is a bad habit to get into. It's great to watch the games, but you can't let one game dictate what you're going to do the following week.
All right, Brian, that's great. Well, like Brian said, we'll be breaking down the games on the website, sportswagers.ca. The NHL, another sport we love to bet, but also sometimes the the wins and losses are so tight. Sometimes you've got the better team on the ice. But you always say it, if you give me the better team with the better goalie, and I'll give you a winner. And we've been going to overtime, and this happened, it was last year, the year before, but man, we've had a hell of a run in overtime and shootout games, and I've seen you talking about it on Twitter. Man, we just can't get a bounce in extra time.
You know, Matt, there's a lot of ways to bet the NHL. You can bet in regulation. You can lay a puck and a half. You can bet in money lines. You can bet a half a puck. You can exclude overtime altogether. Like on Pinnacle, you can bet regulation time only on the money line, right? So that if the game is tied 3-3 after regulation and you bet whatever team, doesn't matter, you get a push, you get your money back, right? And some people are suggesting I do that, because the bad bounces you get in overtime. And, and then you got other people who are suggesting, to play ties or to get away from it or whatever. Well, it's proven that overtime and shootouts is a 50-50 proposition. There is no edge to the favorite. There's no edge to the home team. There's no edge to the better team. It's basically a skills contest. The 3-on-3 is a little bit. It's not like real hockey. It's a wide open, 5-minute crazy 3-on-3 where the underdog has just as good a chance to win as the favorite. And the shootout is a complete skills contest. And just to give you an idea, I'm taking a 10-year sample size. So we're not talking a small sample size, Matt. Let's go to 2016. Who were the Stanley Cup winners last year? Pittsburgh?
Yes, sir.
In overtime and shootouts, they went 10-11. Okay, let's take some bad teams. Teams that missed the playoffs. Colorado last year did not lose a shootout. Not one shootout last year did they lose. Colorado, okay? They went 4-0. Overtime wins, shootout wins. So, yeah, they did not lose a Colorado, one of the worst teams in the league last year, did not lose a shootout. So if you had Colorado in a shootout last year, you won every time. Winnipeg in overtime, they went 6-8. Buffalo went 6-11. The Maple Leafs, 9-11. Edmonton, 11-8. Vancouver, 13-9. 13. I don't know if they ended up with the worst record in the NHL last year, Vancouver, but they went 13-9 in overtimes and shootouts. All right. So that's just last year. I could break it down year by year. I could go team by team. There is no consistency whatsoever. It is over the last 10 years, no matter how you break it down, no matter how, no matter what stats you use, it's a 50-50 proposition. And I've looked it over and over. The dogs win as much as the favorites. It just seems like we're on a lot of these losing, a lot more bad bounces. And there's no explanation for it. You can't. It's very, very simple, Matt. If you're playing underdogs, you have to play it in overtime, because overtime, I'm not talking about a 6 or 10 or 15 or 20 game sample. I'm talking over your betting life. Okay, over the next 30 years, if you bet the underdogs in overtime, you're going to come out ahead on that bet over the long term. If you're betting favorites, you should not include overtime. You should just bet it in regulation only. Why would you, on a 50-50 proposition, right? If you're laying $1.30 or $1.40 or $1.50 and the game goes into overtime, you are holding a vulnerable ticket, a ticket that's going to cost you nothing but money over the long term, right? And I see a lot of handicappers, supposedly smart ones, that are betting these favorites. And I'm not saying don't bet favorites. I'm saying if you are betting favorites, you should bet them in regulation time on Pinnacle, because if you're including overtime, you want to be holding a ticket on a $1.50 favorite when the game's in a shootout on a skills contest? I don't think you do. But I'll take my chances holding a ticket with a $1.50 take back on a skills contest on a 50-50 proposition. It's just like flipping a coin, Matt. If I'm flipping a coin with you over, let's say, 1,000 times, and I say, every time I win, I'm going to pay you $1. Okay? And every time you lose, you're going to pay me $1.40. I'm going to bury you, right? It's the same thing. So just keep that in mind.
Like, I'm just thinking while you're talking here, if we're looking at in-game betting as something that we like to focus on, it's going to be big for us, something we want to really bring the people along in. What about just betting the dog going to overtime when that opportunity presents itself every single night? You're going to avoid getting stuck in a bad game. You're going to avoid chasing a game if you have to. If it goes to overtime and you're taking back a price, is it just worth it to jump in kind of blindly?
Yeah, I really think it is. Like so Matt's talking about in-game betting on Bet365 when the game is over, and the game is going to a 3-on-3 overtime and then a possible shootout. There's a commercial. And in that time, you can go to live betting, click on the game, and you can bet the underdog in overtime and the shootout, right? And it's not a bad bet if it truly is, and we've proven it, that it's a 50-50 proposition. It's not a bad bet at all. You could do it every game. But here's the thing. You can't pick and choose, okay? If you're going to do it, you got to do it every game. You can't do it, like let's say there's 4 games that go into overtime. You can't, and one of them is Pittsburgh, Arizona. You can't pick and choose. You got to take them all. I don't do that because I'm not always watching the game. I mean, I'm watching, but sometimes I get caught up in something else and I miss that. But it's not a bad idea. I'm going to start looking at that, and I will report back on it. But if it truly is a 50-50 proposition, it has to be considered a strong play, okay? Another suggestion we've had from somebody is to play ties only, right? Why not just bet ties, right? Well, that's actually a really bad idea because I'll tell you why. Over as many years as you want to go in the NHL, 20, 30, 40 years, about 20% of games end in tie. That's an absolute. About 1 in every 5 games end up in a tie, which is a 5-to-1 proposition. Well, they're only paying $3 or maybe just slightly over $3 on a tie. If you're betting ties, you're going to get buried on that house edge over time. So ties are a really bad play. If you're thinking about betting them, and if you do from time to time and you win, good. But they're a really bad play. Just based on probabilities, it's a really bad play, okay? So let's get that out of the way. And the last thing I'm going to discuss, Matt, is a half a puck as opposed to laying a half a puck and taking back a price, or betting the favorite outright. And once again, if you're betting that, let's say you take a favorite at $1.40, unless the game goes into overtime, if that bet wins, right, you're gonna win on the half puck too, unless it goes into overtime. And it goes back to what we were just talking about. You don't want to be holding a ticket on a favorite in overtime. It's not a good bet. But let's just, for instance, talk about the difference between laying a half a puck and taking back a price, because that's how it is in the NHL. So let's for instance take a $1.30 favorite in the NHL. All right, if you lay a half a puck instead of betting it straight up, if you lay a half a puck in regulation, you're plus $1.30 or somewhere in that range, which is a 60-cent difference. You're getting a much better take back. So you take a $1.80 favorite in the NHL, you can take a minus a half a puck, maybe plus 101 or plus $1, right? You take a $1.15 favorite in the NHL, you can lay a half a puck and take back 40 or 50 or 60 cents a lot of the times, right? So what is the difference? Like, what would I do? Like, why do I never play favorites? I lay a half a puck if I'm on a favorite, and I'm going to break it down for you. So let's take 50 games at $1.30, which is really not considered to be a big price, right? Now, which is an absolute, 20% of games go into overtime, 10 of those 50 games will go into overtime, right? And if it's a 50-50 proposition, which it is, you're going to win 5 and lose 5. So that's going to be a net loss, right, in overtime of 1.5 units. If let's just take one unit per bet, all right? So just follow me here. You got a sample size of 50 games, but it really doesn't matter the sample size. 50, 500, doesn't matter. You're going to tie 20% of those. So that leaves 10 games going into overtime, in which you'll win 5 and lose 5. So you win 5 at $100 each is $500 in wins. But if you're laying $1.30, right, which you are, and you lose 5, that's 6.5 units. So you're going to lose 1.5 units on those overtime games, okay? That leaves 40 games out of the 50 left. And let's assume you go 23 and 17. Which is somewhat generous. Let's say you go 23 and 17. We're giving favorite players a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, but it really does matter what the record is in the remaining game, because the juice player or the minus a half player will come out ahead every time of the straight up player. So let's go back to that 23 and 17 record in the remaining 40 games at $1.30. You win 23 units, which is 23 times 100. You lose 22.1 units, right? Which is $1.30 times 17. You're going 23 and 17, all right? For a net profit of 0.9 units. Add in the net loss in overtime of 1.5 units, and you would be stuck 0.60 units over a 50-game sample size with a winning percentage, all right? That's pretty easy to follow. Now let's take regulation, where the games at minus 130 are usually in the plus 30 range. Take the same 50-game sample, and the same 10 games go into overtime. You cannot win any of those 10 games, so you're stuck 10 units right off the bat, right? 0 and 10. If you're laying a half puck and the game goes into overtime, you cannot win, but you're stuck 10 units now, all right? However, if we're using the, sample, the 23 and 17 sample, we have to use the exact same sample for this equation, right? Because if the game doesn't go into overtime, you're going to go 23 and 17. It's the same result. Okay, so we go the exact same 23 and 17, and therefore we lose 17 times 100, or 1 unit is 17 units, but you would win 29.9 units, which is 23 times 1.3, for a net profit of 12.9 units. Subtract the 10 units you lose in overtime, and we have a profit of 2.9 units, as opposed to a loss of 0.60 units if you're spotting juice. And the margins get bigger when the price gets higher, Matt. For instance, if we're taking back plus 140 in 20% of the games, our margins increase, right? If we're taking back $1.60 in 10% of those games, our margins increase. So rest assured, this is laying a half puck is the way better way to play favorites, okay? It's the way better way. So when you hear these guys or see these guys talking about, betting, not laying a half puck, and betting the game in regulation, they're wrong. They're 100% wrong. Okay, this is the way to bet hockey. All right? So just to recap, if you're betting hockey and you're betting underdogs, you have to include overtime. It's a winning proposition over time. If you're betting favorites, right, or you're mixing it up, when you bet favorites, bet it in regulation only, okay? Because over time, if you include overtime by betting when you're betting favorites, that's a losing proposition over time as well, all right? The better thing to do is to lay a half puck and eliminate overtime altogether, and I've just gone over that, the better way to play favorites in the NHL and completely eliminate ties. I mean, if you want to play ties in a couple parlays here and there, I guess it's fine, but you're going with the worst of it when you're playing a tie. You should be getting at least 5-1 odds, but you're only getting 3.25. So that's a bet you're going to get buried on over time. It's not a good ticket to have. So you know what? We're going bad now, and there's people that are suggesting stuff. There's no solution. It's just a very simple case of bad luck over a very short sample size. We've lost 6 in a row. There's no explanation for good or bad luck. Some people have really good luck and some people have really bad luck. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's not. It's just the way it is. I used to play a ton of poker. I used to be, playing poker every single day, for 8-9 hours a day. This is before the internet, right? That's what I did. I played poker. In fact, I got started in this business. Well, I shouldn't say this business. I've been betting sports, before I could talk practically. But, this whole career, if you will, started when I was playing poker because I met a guy who was a editor of a gambling magazine, and he kind of liked the way I played poker, and we started talking, and he asked me to do some articles. I had a bit of a writing background, and that's how my website sort of gained some credibility and some followers and some readers because I was able to publish my website in the magazine articles. But going back to that for a second about poker, there were guys, like I used to play a lot of poker, and there were guys that just always seemed to get a card that they needed, right? They had drawing power, as they say. And there's some guys that have no drawing power. It's just luck, right? That's all it is. When I was really small, I used to go to this when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. I used to go to this underground club, Matt, and I was I was just a gopher boy there. I'd get the guys cigarettes and I'd watch them play poker and I'd get them coffee. That's all I did, right? I used to make a few bucks, These guys were big shooters and I used to watch them play poker when I was really small. And at that time, they played with wild cards. The same guys kept getting the wild cards, right? The same guys over and over kept getting the wild cards and nobody was cheating. Well, that's the day I figured it out because some guys have luck and some guys don't. And that's all there is to it. And you talk about overtime and you talk about bounces, right? There's nothing more to it. You're either lucky or you're not. And over the last 10 days or so, we've been really unlucky. But over time, it's going to even out, Matt.
All right, Brian, there's lots of good stuff there. NHL, kind of our betting process, why we do what we do. That's a pretty great breakdown. Something we want to talk about, Brian. We have big plans for 2018, we said last week, but in addition to kind of the YouTube, the Instagram, those sorts of things, we also, you get a lot of mail in the old email inbox there, and so we thought we'd bring some of those letters to the air because sometimes they're pretty nice, they're pretty funny, they're all over the place. So do you want to go ahead and pull something out of the old mailbag?
Okay, so I'm just going to read you a couple letters that I got. Couple of emails I got this past week. We had a rough weekend in the NFL.
To say the least, yeah.
Not the greatest couple days before that either. But keep in mind, we were on a pretty good 2-month run. But after this past weekend, the wild card weekend, here's one email I got. Sherwood. And this starts out. Sherwood, you lowlife. Plus 101.33 for 2017. You liar. You misled people. You scumbag. Tampering with the numbers. I will let people on Twitter know you're a real despicable trash. I'm going to call the Better Business Bureau. Have some human decency. Stop it. Your picks are no good. Look at yesterday, you scumbag. KC. Okay, sure. Laugh out loud. Tennessee. Laugh out loud, outright. Sherwood, if you have balls, call me. You have complete disregard and respect for other people. One can only hope your juice one day. You're a despicable human being. I don't know what that means. Take your juice one day.
I don't know either.
But that's just one.
Should we call him?
Yeah, we should call him. He did leave his
guest
number.
On the show. Oh, hey, yeah,
the funniest thing is he said, I'm going to call the Better Business Bureau. And again, that's like getting mad at the homeless shelter for not having enough peas and carrots. Okay, so that's just one. Here's another one. 2 out of 8 on Saturday. What the fuck, you jerk? It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Well, maybe we'll go on a nice run this week, and next week we'll get some nicer letters.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I said before. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, right?
No kidding.
And it bothers me not. It just kind of makes me laugh. So I do appreciate all the support. We're trying to spread the word here. Spread the good word. Trust yourself more than anyone else. Never, ever, ever, ever pay for picks. It's the worst thing you could possibly do. The thing that bothers me the most about touts and tout services is that it's not regulated by the government, right? Whether it's in the USA or Canada. It's not a regulated industry. These people can claim whatever they want. They can sell whatever they want. They're selling nothing. They're really selling a pipe dream, nothing. They prey upon vulnerable people, that are going through a rough time, and they get promised the world and they get delivered nothing. And it's an ugly, ugly business. And trust me when I tell you, there's very few, there's some okay touts. There's some people that put hard work into it and they sell you something, but, they don't know more than you. They really don't know more. Nobody, we've proven it over and over and over again. Nobody can predict the outcome of games. I watched last week Carolina playing Detroit, or Florida playing Detroit in hockey. We had Florida plus $1.10. It's one of the most one-sided games I've ever seen in my life, right? Florida outshot them 40-17. 40-17. The entire game was in Detroit's end, and Detroit won 4-2, right? That's not unusual in hockey, right? Like, hockey, it's just such a luck-driven sport, and you got to go with the best of it. The same with football and all these sports. There's so many things that can happen, right? You run into a hot goalie, even a guy like in football, there's a receiver that gets thrown a pass right in his hands that instead of being 1st and 10, they got a punt. Just one play. That one single play can change everything in the game, right? The ball is right in his hands and he drops it. How many times have you seen that, right? That could cost you a cover. There's not a tout in the fucking world that can predict the stops. That's one play that goes on in a game. And that's, again, we absolutely stress why you got to look for other things other than X's and O's, and go with the best of it. Look at the intangibles, look at situations, look at over and under reactions, and just hope for the best. Play it and hope for the best. You're going with the best of it. It's like the stock, very much like the stock market. Buy low, sell high, right? And we're going to be preaching that all year again, Matt.
I like it. Give Brian a follow on Twitter at SportsWagers3. Of course, the show at SportsWagersPod. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/SportsWagers. Instagram for the kiddies, sportswagers.ca. And, of course, we are on YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. If we get to 100 subscribers, we can get a custom YouTube address, which is going to be a lot better than you just having to go in and either search for sportswagers.ca or Sherwood's podcast on there. But you can do that. Also, there's a link on the front page, Brian. Webinars, live streams, the podcast, all sorts of good stuff planned for the new year up on there. It's going to be exciting. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this year. I'm feeling great. We had a pretty good year. Like I said, you never stop learning. We're sharpening everything, and hopefully we'll have a lot more winners than losers.
I dig it. We'll keep digging deep this week. For Brian Sherwood-Steinberg, I'm Matthew Finney. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the sportswagers.ca podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. For free daily picks, visit sportswagers.ca.